Welcome to this webinar this morning. Really pleased to have you here with us to talk careers, and very pleased that we're doing this session together with our platinum partner, Lloyds, who have a long history in supporting careers education in schools, and are going to share some of their experience on that. Don't panic, it's not around a sales pitch for their products. It's very much around the support that they can provide to you and your trusts and the learnings that they've had. And we're really pleased that Tris is also joining us to talk about the work that she's been doing in her trust together with Lloyds. We are recording the meeting, so that will be available after the event. I'll also make the slides available. So please do kind of enjoy the session. Don't worry about kind of scrabbling, taking screen grabs, making too many notes. That will all be available. Please do ask questions. There's a chat function, so you can just pop things in there, and we'll come back towards the end and ask questions. Yeah, enjoy the session, and I will hand over now to Phil from Lloyds.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining today's session. In my role as Director for Education for Lloyds Bank, I would like to express my thanks first of all to James and to CST for hosting this today, and to our excellent speakers, Tris from Together Learning Trust and my colleague Ian from Lloyds Banking Group. At Lloyds, we're deeply committed to supporting young people to be ready for the world of work. That's not just through one-off interventions, but by helping build the skills, confidence, and real-world insight that underpins long-term career readiness. Today's session is intentionally honest. It's not about showcasing best practice or promoting a solution. It's about sharing what we've tried alongside school trusts, what has worked, what hasn't, and what we've learned along the way. And I really hope it gives you some practical ideas on designing careers education as a coherent journey, and on building more meaningful, sustained partnerships between employers and schools. There will be an opportunity for you to ask questions later, so feel free to drop these into the chat function at the bottom of your screen during the presentations. And I'll now hand over to Ian. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Just checking that my audio is coming through, Phil, on there, because we're not used to using Zoom, are we? We're a Teams family in Lloyds. But
I can hear you, so carry on.
That's good. We'll go on there. So hi, everybody, and thanks, Phil. So introducing myself, my name is Ian. I look after early careers for Lloyds Banking Groups. We've got a number of different companies under Lloyds, including Lloyds Bank, Halifax, Bank of Scotland, and I look after early careers. So just understanding where that fits from a Lloyds perspective. So it's part of what Lloyds calls its next generation talent team. So within that, we have a group of people who are looking after trying to help Lloyds understand what its skills needs are for the next 5 to 7 years, and then recruiting the graduates and apprentices that we need right now. So that activity will be ramping up, ready for October. And then the third part of their team is me. And what I get to do is to look with a bit of a crystal ball forward 5 years, 7 years, at where the skill requirements are heading for our organization. And then really think about this. If we know, or we have an idea of what we're going to need of young people who are leaving the school system when they're 18 in 2030, then here we're talking about students who are currently in, if you're in England today, of course, most of you will be, in Key Stage 4. So we then have to think about, how do we start to signal to those students what the world of work is going to be like when they come out of school, that may be very different to the world of work as it is right now. And of course, as with all things with a crystal ball, it's really difficult to place strong bets on certain things and saying this is definitely going to happen. We're probably stronger in understanding some of the things that we think are not going to happen, or things we have today that will go away. And so in order to get there to that 2030 vision, what it takes is collaboration, and collaboration with the education system. And what we're hoping to do today is to talk you through some of the stories that we've been going through in that collaboration, and particularly at a trust level, where we can use that insight and architectural view that trusts have, coupled with our view of the labour market and where the labour market is heading, so that together we start producing solutions that we think are actually going to benefit the students. And that's the core of everything that we think about here, is what do we do with the students of today to set themselves up for success in the world that they are going to inherit by 2030 or 2032 or beyond. So as Phil said, it's not today about us saying, hooray, we've found the magic solution, if only that was the case in there. We've found some things that I think you'll find interesting today, and hopefully some ideas there that you can pick up and run with, whether that's with Lloyds or other employer partners that you're working with. We've also got some scuffed knees, and we want to be like really honest with you about things that we thought would work brilliantly and didn't quite turn out the way that they did. And if that saves you some time and some energy in finding the right answer for you, then we will have done our job here today as well, hopefully. So James, you've got some slides. You can pull those up for me, can't you? So you're going to be my Professor Whitty today, and moving slides through. There's like slight flashbacks to COVID there. So it is today about an honest experiment, some perspectives from us as we can see where labour market dynamics are heading in there, but it is also a working account of experiments, scuffed knees, and some of the things that we're already doing differently. So I've got about maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes of stuff that I can talk through with you. And then really what you want to hear is from a school leader themselves. So really pleased that we've got Tris from Together Learning Trust, which is in West Yorkshire, one of the trusts that we work with, who've been really brave in helping us with some of those experiments. So don't hear it from me in terms of what we've been doing. We'll have Tris on the call as well to actually give you that honest experiment. And as Phil said, put the things in the, put your questions as they occur to you in the chat. I'm not going to refer to them as I go on, but Phil's going to be MC for us a little bit later, and he'll work his way through the common themes that are in there. But don't hold back, because this is all about learning for all of us here today as well. Right, okay, Professor Whitty, let's move on and we'll get going with it as well. So it is about curriculum, careers, and the honest experiment for us, and a working session all about our experiments and all about some of the scuffed knees we had as well. If I do that one, James, you know, won't you? A Tinkerbell will move the thing forward in there. So probably just situating this first of all in terms of where we are with Lloyds Banking Group and who we are and how we see the world. So we know, for example, we've got 700,000 young people in every year group in the UK. It's quite a lot in there. And in everything that we design, we're always mindful that those children are on a conveyor belt that they can't stop. We also know from the data as well that sometimes for some students, it's easier for some students to be able to access support than others. Coincidence of geography, some areas have got lots of big employers, some areas are more prosperous than others. So when we approach this from a Lloyds perspective, we approach with 3 missions in mind, just so you know and can ground yourself in our intent here. So how I'm paid is I'm a careers function. So mission number 1 for how Lloyds asks me to approach this is to make sure that we have a strong talent pipeline for the emerging skills that we need in the future. It goes back to that point of emerging skills. But our second mission is more interesting in many respects, because half of the smaller businesses in the UK bank with Lloyds, and they have their skill needs too, but they don't have a version of me typically in an SME. Typically in an SME, the MD is trying to do all of these functions all for themselves. So we also do what we do, thinking about if we can crack the skills mission with education, not only will we get what Lloyds actually needs out of there, but we will also create value that will be able to help and unlock job creation within the SME sector. And given that 2/3 of the UK work for SMEs rather than corporates, that's really important in an age and era at the moment where young people are struggling to find that first opportunity. And the third mission that drives us is a recognition that half of your children that you look after in school today, statistically at the moment, will become customers of Lloyds Banking Group. So whether they come to work for us or not, we would want them to go on and live prosperous and stable lives that they can live to their potential, both from a skill and earnings perspective as well. So these are the three missions that drive us. Thank you. Move on. On we go to the next one. And in terms of what we do, so I came in to run this mission for Lloyds about 4 years ago, and it's unrecognizable now from where it first started. But in 2025, about 120,000 young people go through our programs. I like to try and illustrate that by saying if we hired out Wembley for the day and tried to put all of them in there, there'd still be a very, very long queue of young people outside that wouldn't have got into that stadium. And we do that through three particular missions to make things really simple. So mission one is about developing behavioral skills. So these are the human behavioral skills that the research that we can get from partner universities is showing us in an AI mature workplace are the things that will set humans apart from the AI. Now, some of you will know meta skills frameworks like Skills Builder. We build Skills Builder into every product that we have. At the moment in our market intelligence, we're seeing that meta skills are probably taking a greater level of importance over some of the other things that we've historically prized as an educational output. And we'll come back to that later. The second strand for us is about navigating careers. So our mission in navigating careers is recognizing that for some students, the world is really small. For some students, I'm broadcasting to you today from a very, very rainy and blustery Bristol, not looking its best in the harbour side today. But I will tell you the story in Bristol of the two H's. So we have Hengrove and Henleys. Henleys is 3 miles away from the centre and is very leafy. And if you're a kid growing up in Henleys, then your parents or your neighbours are likely to be doctors, surgeons, lawyers, owners of businesses, or movers and shakers in the political world of Bristol. If you're in Hengrove, which is a post-war estate built for the tobacco factories after the Second World War, out in Hengrove, you're only 2 miles from the city centre, and the neighbours around you will represent a very, very different range of occupations, if indeed they even have occupations in there. It's much more likely in Hengrove that you might be growing up in a family that has experienced unemployment perpetually over several generations. In Henleys, that would be almost unheard of. Now, the strange thing is, Hengrove is closer to the centre of Bristol than Henleys. But when I speak to students in Hengrove, many of them can't even describe what the centre of Bristol looks like. And if they can't see the centre of Bristol, it's going to be really difficult for them to believe that there's actually a place for them in some of the great employers that we have here. So that's navigating careers. And then the third strand for us is about experience of the workplace. So you guys are already grappling with the Equilex model from CEC. We partner with CEC around that, so we know all about it in there. And we also know the stats around NEETs and the importance of experience of the workplace. And we've been pivoting the proposition this year to try and create more opportunities for students to be able to access and understand what the workplace is in earlier years, in line with Equilex, to be able to start in year 7 and work our way all the way through into senior phase. Thank you, Professor Whitty. Let's keep going in there as well. So 700,000 young people in every year group is a bit mind-boggling to wrap your head around for one person. And so what we've tried to do in Lloyds is think about this and how do we create scale? Because scale in terms of provision to us is super important, because without scale, you get rationing. And whatever we think about the accuracy of our data, rationing inevitably will always feel unfair to some people over others. So the key thing for us is about developing scale and then working with our education partners to be able to target that scale to where it's needed. And Tris will speak to that about where that collaboration comes in. Because one of the things that employers definitely don't have access to is the level of child-centric data that you have. So we can access some information, crude information about things like your free school meals, roughly about ethnicity and mixed relative poverty. We can look at IDASI and various indices to understand relative poverty in your area, but it still doesn't tell us about the kids who are in your catchment. You have so much more data that employers don't have. And so what we've tried to do with Lloyds is create scale so that then we can tie in with the data that you have in terms of where do we target that. And when you've got scale and targeting, you have a really good solution going on. Thank you. So 3 topics to cover with you today. The first one then, what happened when someone took the map away from us? Let's move on to the other slide and I'll explain what we mean here. So traditional careers, I'm trying to give you a lecture for those of you who are qualified careers advisors in there, but we all know that in yesteryear, we could take a child through a careers advice session and they name a profession, and then we know exactly what the steps are to get to that profession. If they say they want to be a doctor, we know what qualifications they need. We know what degree they're going to need. We know what universities they're going to need to go to. Therefore, we know what A levels they need to do, and we know by precondition what GCSEs they'll need and what grades they'll need as well. Nice and simple, super linear, until somebody took the map away. And then somebody came along and said, what if the jobs that we've known of the past are no longer the jobs of the future? And if we don't know what those jobs are in the future, then we don't know what the skills are that they need, and we don't know what qualifications people need to get into them. And then suddenly our traditional linear path has started to crumble underneath us. And yet we still have to hit the targets that we have. We still have to push students forward because we can't sit and wait, because the conveyor belt still proceeds all the same. But that is the era precisely that we're in at the moment. And from a Lloyds perspective, there are a number of things relating to meta skills, for example, that are now becoming more important to us than academic qualifications. I was at a business in the community event on Tuesday, and somebody was asking me, how do you pick between 2 candidates when they both look equal? And the one thing I can say is it will never be that case where we pick this person because they managed to score an A in this GCSE, whereas this person scored a B in there. That will probably be the last differentiator that we would go to in there. So it's quite different than some of the norms that we've been used to. Thank you. We'll keep going in there. So there's some patterns that we know that are emerging. They're unlikely to change. So meta skills are here to stay. We can see in long range study, there's an excellent piece of research done by Skill Development Scotland around skills in an AI mature workplace in there. But we can see that those meta skills are the way in which people will differentiate themselves, because the mundane and the routine activities are going to be the place where AI will go first. So whether you adopt Skills Builder as a meta skills framework or you look at other ones that are in there, that's not really the debate for today. But those meta skills, for example, speaking, listening, problem solving, creativity, the ability to set goals for yourself, the ability to plan, the ability to work with other people, the ability to be a leader and a thought leader, they're not going anywhere. They're going to be more important, not less important in what we do. And the second element here, we're calling self-driven learning velocity, because as we can see in the signals from employers at the moment, employers are increasingly expecting individuals to be able to surface their own gaps, to understand their own development needs, and go out and seek the learning and pursue that learning that will close those gaps. So that kind of paternalistic view of employers from years gone by, where employers would sit you down, tell you this is your job, tell you this is the learning, go do that learning, go source it, go provide it. What we're seeing is that fragment. It's still there in the apprenticeship system, but it's less obvious for experienced hires who are increasingly expected to source their own learning. And to do that, you have to have an ethos that learning is a lifelong behavior, rather than learning is something to get to an endpoint exam and then you stop learning. And you will get that because you know this from an educational perspective in there. But we will see a differentiation in people who will be able to take opportunities because they have that learning velocity versus other people who have only learnt up to taking an exam stage and then they stop. Employers will increasingly look for that quality in their recruitment. Okay, thank you. New picture for you here. So, why this has to start earlier is because we haven't got any time to lose. That conveyor belt is just going so fast, and the students have no ability to be able to stop it. That some of these things, particularly meta skills, aren't things that we can easily just teach in a lesson. We can't bring people out for a single lesson and just go, here you are, learn some meta skills. Today I'm going to teach you about speaking, and then we're done, or there's an exam for it. We know that this is starting to move and bridge into some adult learning styles where you learn and then you have to practice, and then the next learning step is going to come by doing, and that takes time, which is why from our perspective, the Equilex model, whatever we think of some of the mechanics of it, the principle in the Equilex model of starting earlier and then building progressively is how we see those progressions with those meta skills. That if we start to intervene in a system at year 10, which is often where a lot of employer traditional engagement in careers has been, that often it's too late. And there are other reasons why it's too late, which we'll get onto also. Thank you. We're getting through things. Okay. So we get some things wrong, right? And we've designed interventions for students, and we thought, well, this is great. And like many employers, we've been through eras where different schools asked us to do different things. Come to a careers fair, can you do a mock interview session? Can you do a CV session? And the big thing that we've kind of realized here is what really works is when you build programs with schools that are systemic and they add up. And they add up to something that you both believe in. Because otherwise, it's very easy to just do a scattergun approach, and you can be in a frenzy and super busy doing loads of things that don't actually add up to a lot. And one of the things that I would note with employers when I speak to them is they often will take what schools ask for as being exactly the right thing. If you invite them into your world to understand your bigger vision, to understand where you're trying to get to as your endpoint, to understand where your starting base is, what you're inheriting from primary, I can guarantee you'll get a different response. But if you want to behave in a transactional way with employers, they'll also respond in a transactional way. They will give you exactly what you ask for, even if that's not necessarily what you need. Thank you. We'll keep going. So next topic I just want to cover here is about shadow curriculum in there. And this is where life gets really hard. We'll keep going, thank you, in there. So everybody in education is asking so much more of you, and I've just raised some new topics to cover for you again today, right? The curriculum is full. There is no more time. And everybody is asking you to do all of these new things and still deliver to the exams that are there at the moment. And the question is always about how do you get more out of what's already there? Thank you. Let's move on. So I'll just give you a quick example here in there, which is the historian. I didn't study history. I could opine for the next half an hour as to why I decided not to take on history in there. But as I've got older, I have a lot of respect for historians, and I wish I hadn't given up on history so early at school, because history turns out to be really interesting, but not necessarily for what we think of. So, for example, if we've got the origins of World War II in the GCSE curriculum at the moment, does Lloyds need to know your ability to recollect facts around the origins of World War II? No, we don't. But does that mean that we're not interested in you because of your ability to be a historian? No, absolutely. So we are interested in you as a historian, but look at the reasons why we are interested. Because as a historian, you're always having to deal with incomplete information. You're having to work out inference. You're having to recognize bias in accounts. You're having to suspend your own bias, question your own bias to be able to find as accurate and as rich a truth as we can form with the data that's available to us now. And that's hugely reflective of what life is like in an organization like Lloyds Banking Group. The challenge is anybody really helping students to understand that they may be studying GCSE history and developing the exact skills that an employer like Lloyds Banking Group is interested in? And then in an age of AI, to what extent are we then questioning how much more or less more important are those skills going to be as AI starts to advance? Thank you. So I'll show you some examples of this in practice with things that we do. So that translation layer is for us to do as employers when we know it. And we've got Tris coming up, who will tell us a few things about these experiments as well. But using our partner trusts as those sounding boards, these are examples of things that we've done as translations. So we have a business simulation, which is called the Sugar Cat Cafe. It's not for business studies students. And the students get involved and they get to run their Sugar Cat Cafe, which is a cat cafe in Cornwall. And through that, what we're doing is not necessarily trying to drive their business studies skills forward, but we are using that as a device to surface those meta skills, give them an opportunity, and also put that learning into a context. We've then, with some challenge from Tris, to upweight that to something that's more credible at a GCSE business studies level. We've now amped that up into a new business simulation where students run and compete to run their own festival food truck. Everything seems to be Cornwall based. That one's at the Rock Oyster Festival in Cornwall. Don't ask me why everything's in Cornwall for us at the moment. And then also then we have Me at 23, which is a very thoughtful piece around financial capability that we did, where with TLT, we were able to do some really careful targeting. But what we did with that one in Me at 23 is, rather than just deliver a straightforward financial capability session, it was reconstructed for us by Skills Builder so that you get meta skills stretch out of it, as well as delivering the curriculum objectives in there. Thank you. So this is the co-construction model. We can move on to, that's it. So this is co-construction model. So we will never be as good at understanding the curriculum as you. We will never be as concerned about hitting those exam markers as you are. Never. That is what you are the experts in. But we're also the experts in what that outside world is and what it's going to be that your children are going to inherit in there. And co-construction allows us to bring both of those things together. We could have sat in a darkened room and done it ourselves. We could have spent a fortune because of the shadow market of companies who are quite happy to sell their services to the likes of Lloyds to build these things and still impose it on trusts. Or we could go into partnership with you and we can use both sets of expertise to produce models that are better. And frankly, take out the middleman of that shadow market and spend the money that reaches the students. We have a choice in there. But you'd be surprised at how many organizations are actually still doing that. One more thing to just do that before I introduce you to Tris, which is one more challenge for today. James, if we go on, that's it, which is present and not present. One of the things that we're always aware of when we go to see schools is when we look at a big problem like today's NEETs problem, and you look at the Milburn report and where that comes from, as an employer, when we arrive in school, we take the students as we find them. You as trusts know who's missing, whether they're actually missing in person or whether they're missing in spirit when we see them in the classroom. And the origins of that, as we all know here, start a lot earlier. So if our engagement with students starts late in the cycle at year 10, or we skip over year 11, and then we only get to see them in year 12, we're really seeing smaller subsets of students all of the time. And that's why that earlier engagement, and particularly on that transition primary into secondary and key stage 3, becomes really important to us. And if I might say, it's also year 11, which in so many schools, employers just don't get to speak to year 11 at all. And I do appreciate the challenges around exams, but it's a lot then that we're faced with catching up in year 12. And some of them we never get to see, of course, in year 12 because they already go into being neat anyway. I'm going to move us through actually a couple of slides here, James, because I think I've talked and we're up to the 10:30 mark in there. And I did say I was going to talk to people just for a short while. So if you can move us on to slide 20, if you can, and zip through. So the students that we routinely miss as Lloyds, they're not really missing, they're present. But the question for us is whether we're present enough to be able to find them. And with that, I want to move on and introduce you to our great partner in Together Learning Trust. And I'm hoping, because I've got you minimized here, Tris, that you're actually here and can come off mute as well.
Okay, good morning. My name's Triestina Bozzo, and I'm the Senior Director for the Together Learning Trust, responsible for personal development. And one of those areas is careers. I've worked in careers and as an assistant head for many years before I moved over to do this across our trust. So it's something that I'm really, really interested in and keen on, because when I was a child, I didn't have great careers advice, and I wasn't exposed to as many different opportunities that our young learners in our trust are today. So we've always been really keen as a trust to get external employers into our schools, because we feel it's really important to develop their knowledge and understanding of the wider world. And we have in the past built some really positive relationships that we've continued to develop and forge over the years. As a result of that, we have a clear structure within our calendar where we have 3 careers weeks per year, where during assemblies we invite organisations and schools and colleges into our schools to talk to our students. And also during those careers weeks, we have staff members that will talk about different career pathways within their subject as well, alongside other activities that students do online. However, Lloyds, well, is very local to us because we're in Elland, Sorby Bridge, and so in the Halifax region as well as Huddersfield. So I was always been really, really keen to get Lloyds into our school because they do offer many of our students employment. I know a lot of students that have gone and worked for Lloyds in the past as well. So as a result of that, I was introduced to Ian virtually. And so we began our first conversation online, and Ian spoke really confidently about the Skills Builder program and the different activities that they put together at Lloyds. And it was a really exciting opportunity because I didn't expect anything like that. I thought just we'd have Lloyds come in, they'd talk in an assembly, they might be at one of our careers fairs, but then all of a sudden I didn't realise, I never knew that companies like Lloyds had a whole range of activities that they can do in schools, developing skills, which ultimately that's what we need to be developing in our learners. I always remember a few years ago our careers advisors saying that young people today are going to have at least 3 or 4 different career pathways, not jobs. So that even emphasised more importantly why skills are important. So I had this initial Teams meeting with Ian and got really, really excited. We started small. The main thing that I wanted to do was coordinate a day's work experience with all of our year 10 students across all 3 schools. So that was approximately 280 students in year 10 in each year. And I remember Ian's reaction actually going, we've never done something to that scale before, but we'll give it a go. And I'm like, yeah, it'll be fine. As long as it's coordinated carefully, I knew it would work. So we did Sugar Cat Cafe. And Ian came into the first school. The first school we did it was Ryburn High School in Sorby. So we came into the first school and he kind of led it in our conference room virtually. I was always a bit dubious about that because that's technology, and I'm always dubious when we're kind of involving technology and streaming into 10 different classrooms. But Ian was confident it was going to work, so I trusted him. And we also had Lloyds volunteers supporting in each of the classroom alongside teaching staff as well. So after the first day of doing this, it worked really well. There were a few glitches that along the way. It's the first time we've ever done anything to this scale, but then we mirrored that in our other 2 trust schools as well. And one of the things that had to happen was the idea is that they create a pitch at the end of the event. So they mark it, they kind of pitch their ideas to the rest of the year group. So groups of students will stand in the theatre and deliver a short pitch. However, at the Brooksbank School, for some reason, there was an issue with their main hall. So the students couldn't do that. And Ian suggested, well, how about we do, like, once again, technology, which scares me. He says, why don't we do like a Teams link, and we'll actually do it in the classroom. So then students are on this web link and they present in their own little comfort of their like 30 students. And it actually worked better because they didn't feel as exposed as they would have done in a theatre in front of another 280 students, or intimidated. So as a result of that, that is something that we have now adapted. And I think that was the start of our journey, really, of that co-creation, is in sharing ideas, trying things, not being scared about taking risks, and being adaptable. So at the end of the Sugar Cat Cafe work experience, we've obviously got the students to give feedback, the staff to give feedback, Lloyds to give feedback, and then we worked on that together. And what we've done now, instead of doing it as a day, we do it as half a day, which works better because the students are in the classroom. So being in one space for the whole day is quite a long time. And also, if students are engaged and it's more interactive, which is what we thought it needed to be as well, threw in some different activities in there, it's a positive experience for all involved. So it actually benefits both sides if we're both kind of saying this didn't quite work, it would work better, and the students would be more engaged if, you know, we had less of the introduction at the start and a lot more of them discussing and sharing, developing and ideas and problem solving. So we've kind of continued kind of down that kind of lane, really. So from there, we've then developed new ideas based on their skills builder activities, and worked on some together. One of the things that we have across our trust is a real drive on disadvantaged children. So we've got wonderful premises in Leeds, Lloyds. So what we did is we took year 9 disadvantaged students, I think we had about 30 in total, to do a workshop in Leeds. It was another skills builder activity. It started with a tour of the building. And then students had some time as well talking to key members of to key employers. People worked in pods, which is very different to how I expect a bank to function. And there was also like a little leisure room as well, where they had kind of table football and basketball within this big organisation. So it was really fun, really, and they didn't wear uniform, so that's always a positive where our students are involved. But the students loved it. They were particularly impressed with the lift as well, because we've got fancy lifts at Lloyds. But they loved it because they were out of Halifax or out of Sorby Bridge, which is the small town in a valley. They were in a big city like Leeds. They were mixing with other people. They were in a really nice environment, and they were learning about different employment opportunities, as well as carrying out different activities in order and developing a range of transferable skills. I do remember the assistant head at Brooksbank actually feeding back to me about one student in particular. So one of these year 9 students was quite problematic lower down the school. He'd been removed, he'd had suspensions as well. But when he actually went to Lloyds and he was in the Lloyds building, he actually threw himself into the whole process. He was asking lots of questions, and Damon said to me, it was a completely different student, and he was polite. And as a result of that, it kind of changed him. And since then, this is, as I said, this is feedback I've received from the assistant head. Since then, it's become more hardworking, more focused. So sometimes these just little things kind of trigger students and do make a difference. He was also involved in an AI workshop recently from a contact that we'd got through working with Lloyds. And yet again, his behaviour was outstanding. We also took year 8 disadvantaged children to Lloyds as well for a visit. They did a Tech She Can. It was all about driving a sustainable future. The focus was on girls and getting them involved in STEM subjects. They really loved the visit. They were really excited about it. It also talks about the future and looking at EV vehicles. And then they had to you got this opportunity to use robots, which was great as well, which was really exciting. And I think what we need to realize with our learners is that it's really important that ultimately we're preparing them for the world of work, and that is forever changing, especially with AI, because many jobs that even exist now might not exist in the future. But it's about the skills that those young people can bring and how they can diversify. Working with Lloyds, we're continuously developing what we do. We've worked with Year 7, and they've done this imaginative inventors activity, and it was about reducing carbon footprint in Lloyds buildings. They've done Year 8, have done a recruitment race, so it's looking at employment and what jobs suit different people, what skill set is required. And then in Year 9, they've done some crime fighters activity, which was all about financial fraud, which is great because that also links to PSE as well, because you look at online issues of fraud. And then Year 11 did Me at 23, which Ian mentioned. And that's looking at young people. They kind of ask them, where do you see yourself in 5 years when you're 23? Okay, so you want a car, you want an apartment. So what are you going to do to get there? And so then they'll say, well, I'll do this job. Then you go, well, do you think financially you're going to be able to afford that? And it gets them thinking about their income and the decisions that they need to make. And maybe it kind of encourages them to be a little bit more realistic as well. And then finally, one of the things that we are working on, which Ian mentioned, is a drop-down day with business studies. So as part of our careers programme for Year 10, our students have 4 drop-down days. And one of those drop-down days, that's for non-core subjects. And one of those drop-down days, we're encouraging students to do that outside of the school environment, because we believe it's going to be aspirational. If it's something linked to their curriculum area, they can see the different job opportunities. So with business studies, we're working with Lloyds to kind of create a day, which is what you were talking about, the festival, where students can use their learning in the curriculum and bring it to life, but in a different context of being actually in industry. So that's the idea moving forward. And with the 6th form, actually, before I finish, with our Year 12 students, we had a number of students that spent the week at Lloyds in Leeds last year. We have students repeating that again this year. But what we're hoping to do moving forward in September is go over to their new building in Halifax and have all our Year 12 students be part of an assessment centre, because that's apparently, I keep on learning, the new way that we recruit and assess students for potential employment. So that's another idea that we've got moving forward. I think it's clear that our careers programme is, evolving and developing all the time. We're really lucky, and I believe that we're very, very lucky to have this positive relationship with Lloyds and to have them in the local vicinity so that we can get our students there as well, because getting them into Halifax is a bus journey away. We plan and we have set activities now that we've scheduled throughout the year with Lloyds. But we also have a bit of a fluid approach as well. So we'll generate new resources and ideas moving forward. The other thing about working for a big company like Lloyds is they have people in charge of procurement as well. And that hopefully, and we know, can open up lots more opportunities as well in different environments.
It never stops, basically, Tris, does it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm just mindful of leaving some space for questions as Phil's got in there. But I think hopefully what you've all got from this anyway is you can see from this relationship with TLT, hopefully in there, the benefit of what we've got here, which is, building those flywheels. So starting early and thinking from a multi-year program in there. So really building progression into what we do, finding that shadow curriculum, the opportunity to surface meta skills in what we in what we're doing, recognizing as Tris has said, the reality of timetabling, they don't get a free pass in TLT just because Lloyds rock up. They've still got to hit all of those markers as well. So it's finding that shadow curriculum in there. But the last bit before I hand over to Phil in terms of questions is I want to impress on you actually, and it's my thanks to TLT, because the number of schools and other trusts that now benefit from products that TLT allowed us to mature. Because as Trish said, we might come up with these ideas in there, but somebody's got to go first. And somebody's got to be brave enough to go, do you know what, will the Wi-Fi hold up? Because the node on the wall down the end of corridor D isn't actually that great. And is this actually going to work? Somebody's got to be brave enough to let us go and do that. And without having trusts like TLT who are going, do you know what, the experiment and the risk of the experiment is worth it for the reward, a whole bunch of other schools down the line don't get to benefit. So somebody has to be brave. And, my thanks to TLT for constantly being courageous enough to let us have a go. Phil, how are we doing on questions? Because I think we're going to try and let everybody out a bit before, aren't we? Because normally when everybody's running up to the hour, they need to go and have a wee and stuff like that before they go off and do things. We'll send these slides out to you, by the way, with resources and things like that. But Phil, how are we doing? Have we got any questions? Are we opening the line?
We have some lovely feedback from Benedict. Thank you very much. Lovely to see you on the call, Benedict. We have a great question from Ian, which actually pulls together quite a lot of what Tris mentioned about careers of the future. So Ian's asked, we've heard of the narrative that we don't know the jobs of the future for at least 15 or 20 years. So why is it genuinely different now? Is this essentially about AI, and Trish, you mentioned that, or other dynamics?
Gosh, right. We could spend probably way more than 2 minutes on there. The fragmentation was happening before AI. Some of it is to do with most of it will be technology driven and the opportunities from technology, but some of it's also to do with globalization as well. It's an increasing number of companies that are trading beyond borders and the growth of the service economy. The data at the moment with AI still suggesting that although some people's jobs existing as they know will be negatively affected by AI, as with all new technologies, new jobs get created from it as well. So I'm never really sure whether I want to place my money on things being super negative, but it is increasingly difficult to be able to predict with certainty. And I think even the traditional occupations that we think of as having been traditional, if you think of architecture, law, medicine, all of those kind of like high-hitting aspiration your high achievers be going to, they will not look the same in 5 years' time than they do today. Even now, the practice element in law is being fundamentally changed by AI. So it ain't going to stop in there. But at the moment, the big bets are on meta skills in there. Don't stop the academics, by the way, but the meta skills, really.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Getting a couple more questions coming in, and these are around how do trusts get access to these wonderful resources? They want to hear more. So thank you, Polly and Vicky.
Yes.
G. Findlay, thank you for asking.
Yeah. So what we'll do is, with James's help, we will get you the slides from today, but also we will give you our prospectus. Now, I'm blessed in Lloyds that there's me and a team of 2, so that makes 3 of us, and that's a lot more than many organizations invest in this space. But it doesn't mean with 3 people, realistically, can I be there for every single trust personally? Probably not. So take the prospectus in 2 spirits. One is, if we do have the capacity to help you, that's fine. Reach out and we'll tell you, because we have a drop-in call every Tuesday morning that anybody can talk to. And my team are insistent we even do it in Christmas week, because we're a bit like that and don't want to drop the 52 weeks a year availability. But I'm perfectly comfortable you use the prospectus to hold that up to whoever the bigger employers are in your area and say, this is a model that I've seen. I'd like to talk to you about not doing exactly this, but things, like this. So use us as, and what we've talked about with Trust today, as the art of the possible to really amplify your asks of your employer engagement, because they genuinely don't know. And if you go in with a timid request, they will genuinely believe that that is all that you're looking for. And in many cases, that's all that you will get in there.
Thank you, Ian. We have no further questions unless anybody's about to pop one in, which will give a few seconds for you to drop.
Can I ask a question of Tris in there? Because I think it's like a realistic thing. So Tris, you and I, as you say, from a random call that you had with some bloke down in Bristol, which feels like a light year away from Halifax, right? We had great conversations, but how did you find the journey of persuading and taking your leadership and curriculum leads and key stage leaders through this journey?
I suppose it's about seeing the value in anything, isn't it? And I saw the value in it, and then having worked, I think careers has always been a strength in our schools. It's something that's not a byproduct. It's something that's ultimately important because we are training people up, educating young people to go into a world of work. So I think the issue is about timetable, but we'd already got those structures in place with careers weeks. So I think timetabling is an issue because it can, we don't want to obviously impact on, curriculum time too much, but it's also seeing the value of it. And I think the staff, once if you promote something effectively and they can see the benefit to the young people, and especially when you've got individual success stories as well, that helps. But also your resources were really good. Your resources are really clear. They've got clear objectives of what the intentions are. They're interesting as a drama teacher initially. They're creative as well. They encourage a diverse range of skills. So I suppose that is part of the selling point as well, that you've actually got a package that you can deliver. You've got a product that you can deliver and offer to schools.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Okay. Phil, how are we doing? Anything else in there? Otherwise, I will wrap up to let everybody go and have a wee before their next.
No more questions. So if you want a quick 30-second wrap up, and then I'll close the call after you, Ian. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you. I appreciate all of your time today. From our perspective, 4,500 schools for one person to be able to deal with is just impossible. The relationships with multi-academy trusts deeply important to us because then we can start tackling things strategically and we can tackle those meatier things that otherwise just sit on the table and look unresolved. So if you want to reach out to me from today until the point where I run out of capacity in there, just keep making the ask. And look, we're all connected through apprentice ambassador networks and careers hubs. So even when I do run out of capacity, I've got employers who genuinely feel puzzled that they can't manage to get through the school gates. So let's see what we can do together. And, and thank you, Phil, for organising this as well. It's great for us to collaborate internally in Lloyds and also show some of that kind of like added value, that we're not just about the bank accounts, right? There's much more to us than just the bank account.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ian. Tris, thank you for bringing it alive. I am so delighted with what you've been able to achieve with Ian and his team, particularly about some of the difference it's made to some of your pupils. That really touched me. So thank you, everybody, for joining today. With 8 out of 10 Academy Trusts banking with Lloyds, we recognise the responsibility we have to continue adding meaningful value to the sector. So that's things like supporting financial efficiencies, reducing risk and maximising revenue opportunities, and ultimately helping you to support your staff and pupils. So alongside those low-cost day-to-day banking services, we offer a range of solutions, payment tools, secure deposit options, and things even such as EV salary sacrifice and minibus procurement. So please make sure you are using the resources available to you. In particular to today's event, James will be sharing some links. Many of the resources are online. They don't all involve traipsing into Lloyds offices if you live in more obscure parts of the country. So they're accessible to all. And don't forget the drop-in sessions that Ian mentioned there, all designed to help you prepare young people for the future. So thank you again for your time today and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Goodbye.